Thank you very much, and Jai Hind to all. Mr. Gopal Dhok, it was very kind of you to introduce me. I just would like to address, not so much really the distinguished audience here, but the larger audience who might have come in and would see the recording later in understanding the Quad from the security perspective. And as part of the series on Quad today that you have had in the last few weeks, I would like to confine myself to some security perspectives that are at the core of the quadrilateral security dialogue. The QSD is the official name of what is, of course, known as the Quad. And I say this only to emphasize that at this stage, all three words are important. First, it is actually a group of four: Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. It brings to the table of the informal group security itself as a focus area. Of course, it does consider security in a broad sense to include several aspects of human security on a full humanitarian plane or on more specific issues of mutual geopolitical interests. The third is that it is called a dialogue. It is not an organization based on a treaty like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Neither is it something like the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and that it is still called a dialogue. This is significant, and it has some advantages as well as drawbacks, which we can look further as we discuss this. The Quad does have a few things, however, in common with multinational formulations like NATO, uh, the SCO, the ASEAN Regional Forum, G7, G20, etc. First, there is an agenda to pursue, even if the agenda develops quite slowly. Second, there is a measure of like mindedness between the members on a few key objectives. I would like to add a caveat here, of course, that there can be a few differences amongst all partners all the time. Some differences may be critical between the members, some that can be smaller can be ironed out, or some can become stronger with changing circumstances. For example, France, an original member of NATO's embryonic Western European Union in the late 1940s, became a full and founding member of NATO, but withdrew later from the military command structure for several years, in fact, resulting in the shift of NATO headquarters from France to Belgium. In groupings now like the G8 or the G7 summit, which took place just a while back, or the G20, there are also comings and goings of members. Some nations are, to use a modern term which the younger generations use, are friended and sometimes unfriended from such groupings. Uh, the Quad may be consisting of four members now, but there is every possibility and great reason for the Quad to progress from the G4, so to speak, currently to a few more, and a bit more on that soon. Third, economic security, economic worries, and economic opportunities, and even economic protectionism are quite important within most groupings, although not openly acknowledged at times. Fourth, no matter what may be the initial drivers or desire to form some grouping by whatever nomenclature, a military security element exists from the beginning or comes in eventually, often in the form of a dialogue. And that's how the Quad began. All these commonalities can be discerned in the Quad itself. As most in this audience know, the Quad began in the immediate aftermath of the 26 December 2004 tsunami. Essentially, it was the armed forces of four nations, the same nations that form Quad today, that got together very quickly, with navies taking a sort of a lead service role because of considerations of maritime geographies of the affected countries and the responding countries. This was the origin of the term Quad, or as it was called, a core group at that time. The four nations and their navies were, of course, Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. And let me here digress a little bit into a personal recounting. I had just been posted a few weeks before the tsunami to Canberra in Australia as the defense advisor to the Indian High Commission. There were briefs coming from headquarters integrated defense staff, which was fairly new at that time, and it had the role of contingencies, out of area contingencies, that was the coordinating headquarters for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. In fact, Admiral Arun Prakash, the CNS, was also chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee, and he was instrumental in galvanizing some countries to offer help even when there was no quadrilateral security dialogue or anything of that sort existing at that time. But everybody rose to the occasion, responded, and I need not go into what a tremendous work all nations did, and India, I think, did the largest share of helping uh, neighboring countries while itself was also severely affected. The tsunami, in that sense, defined the Indian Ocean region and linked four Indo Pacific nations and their navies, armies, and air forces. It was, in a way, quite literally a wave that rose off the coast of Indonesia because of the earthquake, and eventually that wave defined the western extremities of the Indian Ocean by hitting Somalia coast, Kenya, Tanzania, and the islands within the Indian Ocean region itself. It literally, the tsunami defined the beginnings of the Indo Pacific and the Indian Ocean region. Four nations, with the help of nations that were affected, like Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Maldives, all played key roles in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. At a national level, of course, each of the affected nations played central roles in their own HADR effort despite the tragic devastation they had experienced. The Indonesian armed forces, just to take an example, remained mobilized for weeks, not only helping their own citizens, but providing local guidance, support, and every liaison assistance to foreign armed forces who were helping them with supplies, rescue, and relief work, etc. In India, I sometimes feel that we are forgetting that along our own coasts, the tsunami had ravaged tens of thousands of lives and ravaged geography also. And our armed forces were critical to assist local administrations throughout the coastal regions, not to mention of what we did to help neighboring countries. Significantly, and this is important, I would like to reiterate that China did not offer any immediate attendance to any country and stepped in only later. And this was noticed by all countries that were affected and all countries that were responding. This then was the birth of the Quad in human security, surprisingly or not surprisingly, because military elements are first responders in most cases for HADR, with the military instruments of all these four countries in the lead. Briefly, and only to recap, therefore, I would like to say that the first informal meeting, but with the name Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, was in Manila in May 2007 on the sidelines of the ASEAN Regional Forum Summit. After that, it was in general limbo, with both Australia and India being careful not to antagonize China. Even the US under the Obama administration was quite soft with China, uh, ignored developing the Quad at that time, and one can say that from 2007 till about 2014 or 17, Quad almost died. It was revived towards the end of 2017 with careful wording, and there was no mention of China, etc., as the reason for coming together. But things did change from 2017 to 2021, and the Quad now seems at the threshold of something more concrete. To an extent, understandably, in official communiques after Quad meetings, including the recent summit, there has been no direct mention of China as a concern. On its part, however, China seems to take every opportunity to run down the Quad as an ineffective, avoidable coalition, or even a feeble attempt at an ASEAN NATO against China, which China keeps saying is not going to work anyway. So, the irony that I would like to suggest here is that the Quad officially tries to convey it is not only not against China, but with only oblique references to the need for an adherence to a rules-based international order, freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation, the need to counter maritime issues and problems, etc. And it barely hints that it could be about China. China and now sometimes even Russia seem to say that a coalition like the Quad is against China, but it won't amount to much. Firstly, the germination of an idea that there could be a concert of a few democracies in the Indo Pacific itself is now old and needs to gather a very robust confidence in itself. Secondly, at least three of the four countries were becoming more openly conscious of some commonality in their longer term concerns about China, with Australia somewhat hesitant in voicing these for quite some time. Thirdly, a maritime naval leading edge to this group was more workable initially than other instruments. The importance of China as a major trading partner for each government, combined with the difficulties of political congruence within this concert, and this was, of course, a dampener. However, the difficulties of finding any satisfactory balance between prosperity and security seems to have increased over the next decade, not only for India, not only for the three other Quad countries, but for several others. In fact, in the previous lecture, Dr. Rajiv Gupte spoke about this in his interesting use of game theory to say how some ASEAN member nations were feeling the heat from China's arrogant and almost belligerent behavior, especially in the maritime environment that affects them deeply. Concerns about China are now being increasingly raised by militaries, scholars, analysts, government officials, and ministers, as well as heads of governments within the Quad. Not only for Quad, but even now for some European Union and ASEAN members, it is becoming clearer that appeasing China has not worked. Instead, over the years, China's influence, power, interests, and involvement in the larger Indo Africa Pacific region has grown in such ways as to create worries not only for the Quad, but for several countries in the region, and China creates more anxiety every passing month than assurance, even within its own OBOR, One Belt, One Road members. China's adroit moves in the South China Sea, beginning with the Paracels in 1974 against then South Vietnam, and in fact rubbing the emerging victorious North Vietnam wrongly also, despite being friendly, and subsequent expansion of territorial claims on the basis of its nine dash line now seems to be mutating like viruses into the so called Forsha, that is, four sands baseline tactic, which could perhaps even become a strategy for them. Each member of the Quad undoubtedly has significant economic interdependence with China. Consequently, all four, but especially Australia, Japan, and the US, have to handle more serious contradictions of what we can say between security and prosperity, or to put it colloquially, like navies do, between flag and trade, than does India. On the other hand, while India may not be as linked to China for its prosperity in terms of Chinese energy and commodities demand or manufacturing investments and markets, it has serious continental and maritime concerns about security. These are mainly in terms of China's territorial claims across our borders, but also in terms of its maritime power, places, and bases in the Indian Ocean region. Unprecedented Chinese belligerence from May 2020 and subsequent violent clashes in mid-June 2020 at Galwan resulted in the death of 20 Indian soldiers and possibly many more Chinese. Japan, quite obviously, has to contend with Chinese claims on the Senkaku Islands. In recent times, it also had to counter very regular Chinese provocations in the seas and airspace in and over the Senkakus. Besides, Japan would be most impacted and worried if China ends up incorporating Taiwan within itself. Australia now has several economic worries and has had to take China to arbitration on economic sanctions and strong armies across a range of political issues and diplomatic issues in this Australia-China relationship. The Sino-American points of friction are principally akin to the Australian misgivings and stem from the degree of security that the United States ended up trading for its prosperity. Their issues are wide ranging and complex, of course. China is a clear challenger to the United States' preeminence in the Western Pacific and to the trust its treaty partners might have. It aims to be a peer military power in the midterm with likely and effective multi-continental sway. It is on its way to becoming a global economic competitor. It may acquire more friends and is working hard to acquire those friends. Other American concerns are, of course, over the trade deficit, intellectual property, and espionage. In fact, economic ties with China that some expected would alleviate friction have actually added to it, as said by an authority. Thus, while there are some common aspects of politico-economic concern across Quad members, the deeper issues that concern India or Japan may not worry one or both to the or both the others to the extent Delhi or Tokyo may hope they do. Similarly, the positions that each has taken regarding the BRI or on some Chinese investments differ and may continue to differ. Yet, through all this, I believe security concerns have begun to dominate and their Chinese characteristics are now clearer than they have ever been before, due in no small measure to the Wuhan virus, China's wolf warrior diplomacy, and renewed belligerence with several neighbors. Not surprisingly, since 2017, the so-called Quad 2.0 that was mentioned in the introduction seems to have got some new life. And I would argue it needs to be made much more robust. The Quad rightly is progressing along several cooperative lines. Recent discussions give the Quad an economic role in terms of increased trade, greater economic cooperation. It also is considering setting up avenues for infrastructure build-up in the Indo-Africa Pacific via models that capitalize on the rules of law within Quad nations, better diplomacy, avoiding the charges of corruption that Chinese face, or creating conditions of debt for the receiving nations. The second part is, of course, humanitarian measures, including fighting COVID and better information management and sharing of intelligence. Above all, it has to think of a robust response to deter China across the Himalayas, in the South China Sea, and in the East China Sea against Japan, Taiwan, and some ASEAN nations, especially Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, and now, of late, even serious violations against the territorial sovereignty and integrity of Malaysia. And let us not forget, of course, the threats being made about Taiwan ever so often. I would therefore argue that more than ever, the Quad would matter for regional security through counterbalancing China. For this, the Quad has taken some steps, but perhaps much more needs to be done. On the maritime front, naval interoperability is becoming better through more frequent exercises involving all four Quad nations. Second, of course, more needs to be done in the other equally important dimensions of warfare, which include air, land, cyber, and space, in addition to the sea, which I've mentioned. These five fingers, as such, are created separately and, depending on the context, be used like fingers on a strategic keyboard. But their greatest benefit and impact comes from these five fingers closing into a tight fist of jointness. They will create better deterrence through better counterbalancing strategies against China, not only joint within India, but coalitionally in aiming for greater jointness with the other three Quad partners. Third, this could create a necessary interest in other nations, notably some ASEAN members, to consider participating in a possible Quad expansion to what could be called Quad Plus. This is what has happened to various groupings we discussed a few minutes back. They expand slowly as their appeal and utility and perceived need by others grows. While some ASEAN nations may currently be very tentative about the idea, their concerns about China are real, even as very few remain quite openly pro-China. However, there are very important nations like Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, to name just three, who are thinking differently. Let us consider a very large country like Indonesia. It has a tremendous expanse right across the Indo-Pacific, a robust economy, stable government, rule of law, very professional armed forces, and friendly relations with several nations. Not all its interests coincide with the Quad, and as I have said, even the Quad members have some issues amongst themselves bilaterally. However, the potential for cooperation remains with nations, large nations like Indonesia. I would suggest, therefore, that these nations will watch how Quad evolves across all dimensions of security. They will be watching all four of us. Let me therefore mention here two or three other quartets or quads. One I have mentioned is about the four lines of progress that Quad can make. This is represented by the quartet of DIME, that is diplomatic, informational and intelligence, military and economic. The four dime construct that is used to define, practice and evaluate statecraft. This is in fact, in a sense, the Cabinet Committee of Security, headed by the Prime Minister, with the four ministers in exactly the dime sequence. That is the Foreign Minister for Diplomacy, Home Minister for Intelligence and Information, the Defense Minister for military part, and the Finance Minister for the economics, that is dime. Other than the dime quadrilateral and the CCS quad, we have to recognize perhaps what I would say a fourth quad. This, I would suggest, is what China is trying to do with acquiring friends and influencing regimes. In India, I think we need to realize that we as yet have no partner or friend anywhere close to what China and Pakistan are for each other. To add to this, China is drawing Iran as well as Russia closer into its strategic orbit. This could be a quad of sorts from their perspective. Our relations with Russia are good, as are relations with Iran, but also so some new stresses are developing, which of course need to be managed adroitly. The recent meetings in Dushanbe between the two national security advisors is a good example of the efforts being made. And here, 2 points may be considered. There are, there are fundamental long-term stresses in the China-Russia relationship, but nonetheless, they are drawing closer due to mutual coincidence of some interest in many areas, especially due to US-Russia friction and the growing Russian energy exports to China, which are becoming a major money earner for Russia itself. Russian friction and growing, the second is that India's old relationship with Russia could be useful for a mending of the US-Russia friction and to help further improve Russian-Japanese relationship. Given these complexities, India's push for the Quad security relationship deepening will be not only good for India, but for other three Quad members and future partners as the Quad may expand. It may actually help peace through counterbalancing, and I hope we do not feel embarrassed for much longer in saying so about Quad itself. Finally, Quad is not and need not be an ASEAN NATO, all the rhetoric about it notwithstanding. NATO was born out of the Atlantic Charter in 1941, born out of the consequences of the Second World War, born in the circumstances of the Cold War, which was beginning at that time between the West and the East, and was a political alliance that solidified into a treaty. It is a political treaty alliance, now fraying somewhat and looking for new meaning and roles, with military partnerships that are a consequence of such an treaty alliance. As such, the term a military alliance between nations is actually incorrect, especially if there is no treaty, because without a treaty, you can have military partnerships, but an alliance is really a political alliance between nations, which has then military partnerships which are enabled in very strong ways. In the Quad, of course, three members are bound by bilateral treaties, that is the US and Japan and the US and Australia, which are not militarily as categorical as NATO is, of course. So the Japan, United States, and Australia, United States are treaty allies. India, on the other hand, has good relationships with all these three, certain strategic and military partnership agreements with all three, but is not yet and unlikely to be allied with anyone. So Quad is not a NATO and need not be one. To conclude, a robust Quad with coinciding security interests, military interoperability across all five dimensions, that is air, land, sea, cyber, and space, and of course, the DIME, diplomatic, informational, military, and economic, may be a good step for the Indo-Pacific and help us get more partners and help keep this dragon in check. So thank you very much.